When did you decide that, hey, I just want to kind of try being a people leader?
I have gone back to school for the last 1 year, kind of upgrading on strategy skills. I think it's about individual preferences.
I would like you to give one advice to the young engineers out there.
If your foundations are good and you're good in understanding architecture, patterns, and being able to manage those aspects as foundational things, I would say would work pretty much for anybody.
Does failure scare you now?
If it's too comfortable, it's not going to be challenging, right?
Yeah.
And if it's going to be really challenging, it's not going to be easy and not going to be comfortable.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of our podcast, Big Gulp of Leadership. I'm your host, Deepthi, and today we'll be zooming into the world of tech and engineering, a world where code never sleeps and neither do deadlines or innovations. Whether you're someone who's starting to write a clean code, you're juggling sprint deadlines at mid-level, or even managing chaos at the top, I promise this one's got something for each one of you. In the next 30 minutes, we will today decode how real tech leaders think, from cracking customer-first solutions to staying relevant in the fast-moving world. I'm already very excited about the conversation that's about to unfold because joining me today is a leader who brings with him over 2 decades of rich experience in building and leading high-performing teams and also driving large-scale tech transformations. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our guest today, Mr. Sunil Kalkunte, who's the Director of Engineering and the powerhouse behind the global technology team. Welcome, Sunil, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Deepthi. I'm actually nervous. The people who sat here before me are big names, and I hope to do justice for the podcast and share something that I've learned through my journey here.
I'm sure you'll do because I think you've evolved with all the tech changes and you've led with complexities. And also, I know you've mentored numerous professionals
I
throughout,
had the pleasure.
throughout your journey. I think I don't want to keep the audience waiting.
Sure.
So I'll dive straight in because I'm already getting the vibes of like a part career therapy and a tech masterclass today. So yes, diving straight in, Sunil, into my first question, which I'm very curious about and I'm actually fascinated because I think in the world of engineering, the first instinct for any engineer is to always jump into the problem solving mode, right? Hey, here's the issue and let's fix it. Which is great, by the way, because we all love to have those go getters and problem solvers in our teams. But I think in the rush to do that, sometimes probably we often forget who we're doing it for. It's the customers, right? So, my question to you is how do you drive and how do you encourage your teams to kind of put themselves in the customer's shoes, be customer focused, especially since I think your teams not only just look at the US, but a few other markets as well. And that is like a range of cultures and differences. So, how do you manage to kind of drive the team to do that?
It's not just a challenge, but it's also a phenomenal opportunity, right? If you look at customer obsessed or customer first mindset, it's not just a slogan, right? Teams have to live it, breathe it, and believe in it. A lot of this go into kind of building that mindset. I think teams also start getting closer to the product as they keep building it. If you look at the problem space, and like you rightly said, if we target the right problem, you'll solve the right things for the customer. As global technology group, a customer in Tokyo, Bangkok, or Texas, they're not the same, and you can't just build for an average customer. So you have to drive and build some empathy for the customer and kind of think from a POV of what would the customer want. Multiple customer scenarios and personas, right? And if you look at the personas and look at customer journeys for our products, somebody who's operating the store or somebody who's walking into the store, 2 different people, 2 different expectations and experiences. So the product needs to behave differently and work for both of them, right? So as an engineer, it's very easy to solve a technology problem, right? But it's when you solve the real problem and the right problem is when the customer is really delighted, right? So from that perspective, at teams in 7-Eleven, customer journeys, also having a lot of store walkthroughs. We do a lot of store visits so that engineers here, even though they're miles apart from real stores, have an experience of how the stores operate, That experience you give them real good insights on how customers behave and how operators need to work with customers. That I think is a real good experience for any engineer, right? And I think to kind of circle back, having an empathy point from a point of view of what the customer needs and what the operator really needs to build an efficient business, run the business efficiently, and delight the customer at the end of the day. That's kind of what really works.
So when it comes to building any tech product, what I realized is one shoe fits all is never
No.
what is applicable there. And I also my biggest takeaway here is going to be the fact that you brought up empathy.
Sure.
I mean, it's very easy to kind of just drift away. It's a very simple word, but I think when implemented and when you kind of you show that to the customers, I think it's a different ball game altogether.
Absolutely. And I think the developers and engineers who have the right amount of empathy actually make the right trade-offs
Yeah.
to build the right product. So that's key.
Well, Sunil, I think the next question, which is like almost a follow up, this is, I'm sure this keeps your teams up in the night because you feel you've built a great product, the basics are working fine, but do you always feel that should we just ship it? Should we just wait, make it shinier? I mean, when do you even decide what's good enough to go live? And also, I would like to know what is this whole excitement that you have behind this process of going live?
So I believe in the concept of a right-sized product. What I mean is basically, is it valuable enough and it is sizable enough and small enough to launch quickly? Launching early gives you a lot more lessons and knowledge than all planning will give you, right? It's about basic things, right? Is the product giving the right core values for the customers? Are you able to manage the risk effectively? Which is basically, is the product covering the necessary compliance, necessary security? These are all non-negotiables, right? Is it completely secure, right? And also in terms of, are you keeping the feedback loop closed and open to make sure that you're learning fast when you ship, right? It's always easy to get customers' point of view. Use tools, right? And you have a lot of metrics that can keep coming back when you ship. And you can make an incremental progress to make sure that the product is good enough. It's never easy to ship a perfect product. It's not great to ship a perfect product as well, because by the time you ship the perfect product, customers already moved on or the customer expectations have already changed. So in my view, shipping early with the right sized product is great because you learn a lot of things and you make the right changes. It's okay to fail and then kind of learn from those mistakes and then move forward. The joy of shipping, of course, is in terms of finding that customer delight, right? When things go live, you want that first transaction hitting and you're monitoring everything, and that delight after months of hard work is a phenomenal experience. And I think we live through as an engineer, and I spoke about this in my recent video as well, that engineering is a place to be just for that experience, right? That it gives you no joy greater than delivering a product to a customer.
I think there's a lot of juggling that happens there. First thing is you're balancing speed, aiming for perfection. But while doing this, there are times when, the deadline's not met, and at the same time, there's a stakeholder expectation that needs to be met. How do you go back and tell your stakeholder, I'm like, hey, listen, this is not going to, go live this Friday probably. Is it easy, or I'm sure it's not, but how do you manage that?
I think that's the key thing to balance in terms of what is the right risk appetite, what is the right trade-off that you're making. Key for me has been in all my journey being transparent, right? You have to bring everybody as stakeholders on board where you make a decision saying, can we go into a certain market with certain set of features, which is not necessarily everything, but then we can go in and learn from that. And then you make the right bet in terms of being transparent about, here are the features that are not going in, probably bugs or probably features that are still not there, but they're good enough. We have the trade-offs. We've covered the risks. We've covered the compliance. We've not going to be under any reputational risk if there are certain failures. So that's key for us as 7-Eleven, right? You don't want to ship something that a customer will not actually like and it has a longer term impact. You want to make sure that whatever you're shipping as well is really acceptable to the customer. So the stakeholders have to be really on board, and both sides, right? As developers or engineering or technologists and as stakeholders, you ought to be on the same page that this is good enough to go live. And of course, in different markets, you ought to be very careful about what's very specific to those markets. and be able to manage that expectation in each of those markets as well. So I think transparency for me has been key, and managing the acceptable risk around it. Yeah. And going live early has been easy enough in terms of learning from that.
There's too much going on in a techie's life. I mean, it's really impressive to know how the entire process happens. I mean, there's a lot going on. I always keep hearing, from the HR world. I listen to all the tech teams saying, "Oh, we're going live. We're busy." I really understand today that there's so much work going on, which is really, really impressive.
Beautiful experience.
Yeah. Sunil, I think I'm moving on to one of my favorite questions, which I'm very, very curious to know your thoughts on it. Let's speak a little bit about the buzzword today, which is AI. I mean, should I say it's a buzzword or it's the most feared word? I would love to listen to that from you. Because I think at the rate AI is kind of, taking over our lives, it's there in our apps and our tools. Is this going to change expectations for the engineering teams today? I mean, are there new skill sets, new mindset? How is it? What is it?
AI is here to stay. And I think it's probably the biggest thing and the best thing that's happened probably in technology in the last decade or so or more. Purely from a effect factor, if you look at it from a conversation perspective, it used to be, can we ship it? It's changed from that to how can we ship early and responsibly, right? And if you look at the journey in terms of languages in computer science, and in the last few years, GitHub Copilot started, and it was basically auto completing stuff, and it AI was basically correcting some errors and finishing up some work, right? So you used to do as a developer 80% of the work, Copilot or something added the 20% of it, right? Today, in 2 years, the shift has been that Copilot or another tool would do probably 80% of the work, and you would start fixing the AI errors. So it's gone from AI fixing human errors to humans fixing AI errors. It's gone to that change in a couple of years. I think it's phenomenal experience because if you look at the journey of complexity, when technology has become easier, you probably had more and more people adapt and adopt, and more engineers coming on board to build software. Yeah. So you'll probably see as AI evolves and makes it easier to build software, you'll probably see greater and better software and also more people coming on board. So I don't think it's something that we should be fearful about. We should be embracing it. Yeah. It also will be good for engineers to know how they can actually become AI native. An AI native engineer, as somebody who's coming from college, can probably teach an organization more than somebody who's been in the organization but not AI native, right? And to be able to accelerate development, build, ship products faster, nothing better than what's in there today. And it's evolving at a very fast pace as well. And accuracy is improving as well. So as we move forward, AI is going to be fundamental in terms of not just as developers, but how does it impact business as well. So there's a lot of things that we have to build as some amount of guardrails, like how do we make sure that we are using AI ethically? What are the guardrails in transparency? How do we manage bias, right? How do we manage the data around it? So there are some guardrails that as an entity, as an organization, and as a developer, you have to be mindful of, and how the governance will determine whether the product is ethically built, responsibly built, and as a developer, are you enjoying building with it? So you can build a better product and solve that real problem that the customer had, and work with that empathy that the customer really deserves, right? So I feel it's a fantastic thing that's happened. I'm in the thick of things in terms of using AI for a lot of things, not just as engineering, but day-to-day stuff, right? So for me, it's today is second nature in terms of using AI.
Oh, in fact, I actually, read an article where supposedly AI is going to replace HR professionals. I'm like, what? At some point, I think we do need human touch. I mean, it's a great technology, it's a great tool, but I think at the end of the day, like you said, it's going to be a great addition, but never a replacing factor.
Today, any AI still needs to be told what
What to do.
Somebody
Right.
still has to tell it.
Well, also the key here is, like you mentioned, it's not just it's a great technology, but using it responsibly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That adds a lot of value in how it is evolving. Okay. Right. Sunil, I think so far there have been great conversation. I think this bit, what you added here, is going to build in a little bit of confidence in the young engineers who probably fear AI, or most probably so because of the fear that's already generated because of a lot of conversations. Um, well, moving on to my next question. Now, this is going to be very interesting to hear from you because I think over a period of 2 decades that you've had your career, you've donned a lot of hats, you've had a lot of roles. When did you, in your journey, I for sure know that the shift between being an IC to being a leader took quite some time for you. But what triggered and when did that shift actually happen? When did you decide that, hey, I just want to kind of try being a people leader? How was it? How was the journey?
I don't think I've switched between roles. For me, both are very nebulous. And somebody who wants to make a choice, right? Like IC is for somebody who wants to go deeper into problem solving in a very specific space. Leadership, on the other hand, is if you want to amplify and it energizes you, and you want to, you can work to amplify somebody else's strengths. That's where you want to be in leadership. For me, I don't think I've been in one of those or the other at all times. I've always had to shift depending on what the situation demands and what the context is, and where I can really drive value. Right. So, in certain phases in the same year, I've probably been in an IC mindset because that's what was demanded during that phase, and I could drive better value of myself and to that situation. And in certain cases where I had to mentor, manage teams, and steer, I've been in leadership mode. So I think it's not one or the other. I would say it's very nebulous. It's what gives you real joy, right? And as an IC, you generally want to also look at problem solving. I've believed in a T-shaped identity for myself, and I've kind of drive to find a way to go deeper in something where I have certain knowledge that I can really contribute to. And as a horizontal, I've kind of built more transferable skills where leadership, architecture, and understanding a lot more of foundational stuff and first principles helps me kind of shift between paradigms and context so I can contribute and shift depending on what the context is and drive better value. So I think for anybody who's looking to really build a career, and I see something where if you're really passionate about deep problem solving, that's kind of where you want to be. And if you find joy in finding somebody's strengths and amplifying it, leadership is the place to be.
Time and again, during a lot of our conversations, you've told how passionate you are about building new products, um, your architectural role. I think, do you somewhere feel that you're still able to keep that architect in you alive while being a people leader, or it just like a lost in transition kind of a mode happening there sometimes? Is it easy? Because it's not easy to be a people leader either. So how do you manage that shift every single time?
It's not easy, but I think at the end of the day, I have to be in control of my time, and I have to make time for things that I really feel passionate about. So it's for me to find out what is it in that current space that is really a critical value for the business and for the work. And if I go deeper in it, can I find better value for the teams, either on technology or on leadership? So I've gone back to school for the last 1 year, kind of upgrading on strategy skills, and also technology skills, and trying to find ways to bring better value to the table for the teams and for the work. So I think it's about individual preferences, and also making time and finding that passion, right? I think what is that real fire that keeps you going is something that's very individualistic, right? But for me, it's been about, hey, how can I be a better leader? How can I kind of contribute better to the business? Can I find ways to learn, keep learning? I think it's all about being curious all the time, right? And also in terms of how do I, like I talked about the transferable skills, right? If our foundations are really good and you're invested in kind of building a lot more knowledge on architecture, patterns, and foundational stuff, you can kind of bring better value to the context, and you can context switch, right? And also networking, right? And I think there's a lot of joy in learning from people, right? So I would say that's critical for us. And I think a lot of times people get also lost in the title part of it, right? Like,
Correct.
essentially, I've seen people with Any title or no title basically drive an organizational change, but a lot of leaders basically just managing people, right? So it's about finding the right people that you would really get, let's say, energy from, learning from them, also sharing your own knowledge about, right? And the collective progress is really what will drive the organizational growth.
So, like you rightly said, you made two very beautiful points. It's all about, finding your passion, staying curious. I think when you're doing all of this, well, title barely sometimes makes a difference. You can make a difference without a title. It's so beautifully put. Thank you, Sunil. The next thing that I want to kind of bring up here is something that really, really amazes me because you're someone, let's bring in your experience again. I think 2 decades is not a short time. And throughout that time, you have seen so many shifts and you've seen technology evolve. Like it was a crazy evolving of the technology. Um, what really kind of amazes me here is you've not kind of lost in that whole process. You've managed to stay calm. You've managed to stay excited about everything that's coming. How do you manage to stay relevant in all that's happening around, everything that's coming new? There are new platforms, there are new tools, there are new ways of working. In fact, I think I also remember in our previous conversation that I had, you were talking about how deployments used to happen back then versus how it happens now. It's all on cloud, which is so cool, versus your data center experience that you spoke about. So, how has this shift been for you, and how have you managed to stay relevant? Is it a scary thing when I look at it from outside? Every time there's something new that people are talking, the techies are talking about. So, how is it? How is the whole feeling, and how do you stay relevant?
Two aspects to it, Deep, right? One, I think it's a journey, and one, you made me really sound old after saying 20 plus years. But then, like the 20 plus years also lets me kind of reflect back on the number of failures I've had. I have not really been successful all the time. I've seen a lot of setbacks, bad deployments, demos going bad on a demo day, bad hires. But if you look back at it, that's the best school you could probably go to with no tuition fees. Or you could say that's a tuition fee for that school, right? So that's been phenomenal experience for me, right? And it's also about, again, staying relevant is about being curious, right? And if I have built and if I'm able to build transferable skills, it'll let me switch into the role that I need to bring the right value and to drive what is needed for that particular situation, right? So I think staying relevant is tough. You have to find the one thing that you can really double down and go deeper in. You cannot be a master of everything, right?
Yes.
I'm generally somebody who believes in generalists, right? And of course, like I said, an IC kind of a role would probably be something that I would switch to in a year. And multiple times maybe depending on the situation, like some teams going through a technology issue and maybe go deeper in it. I may not be knowing it, but I would probably find the passion to go learn about it and then see if I can contribute to the team. So I think it's about what really ignites you, passion that you can drive. And again, something that has to come from you. That fire has to be within the self, right? It can't be something that's coerced for you. So it's kind of where I see it going.
Okay, Sunil, um, I would like you to give one advice to the young engineers out there because I feel that they probably could be overwhelmed with so many new technologies coming in and they may feel that I need to know it all to kind of up my game. So, what is your advice to all of them?
I'll circle back to one thing that I mentioned earlier. It's about core skills and first principles, right? If your foundations are good and you're good in understanding architecture patterns, and being able to manage those aspects as foundational things, it's transferable. So
Yeah.
when you get to a new technology, these foundations are pretty much the same. You should be able to pick up something fairly faster. And if it's a new domain or technology, some of these things are going to be really leverageable when you really see a challenge that this is a brand new technology for me, or I'm taking up a new job which I don't know anything about, or it's a brand new stack that some team is working on. So I would say core skills, first principles, foundational things are really something that's worked for me. And I would say would work pretty much for anybody.
Is it like about going back to your basics while you're building on it?
Not just going back to basics, but I'm saying as you grow, you learn to know what is the basic architecture, what are the architectural patterns that are coming in, what are the basic compliances, what are the things that are really building blocks of systems, system design, design thinking. Those would be really critical aspects that anybody should focus on.
I think the trick that works here is just constantly, no matter what, it's just staying curious. And also, I think being accepting of the fact that you can't know it all. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, Sunil, I know this has been a great conversation so far, but unfortunately, all good things come to an end, and so does this conversation, but not without, no, before my last question. Very, very important for anyone out there to know this. Um, I want to talk about two very important things that very silently kind of build our careers for us and shape our careers. One is the people who guide us, and second one is the moments that make us humble, which is mentors and failures. I remember also you've constantly had mentors throughout your career. In fact, you have one now also, if I'm not wrong, an executive coach. That's great. I mean, you're someone who believes that learning never ends. And how do you emphasize and the need of a mentor? And also, even more important is how do you go about finding one? That is, I think, an even bigger challenge. So, your 2 cents on that.
Sure. I think we get confused with mentoring being somebody will solve the problems for us. It's the total opposite. It's how somebody can ask the real uncomfortable questions so you can solve it yourself. I think it's been a phenomenal journey for me because right through my career, I've had the real opportunity and the pleasure and the privilege to have found real good mentors at every stage in my career. One who were not naturally mentors for me, but I really bugged them to say, "Hey, I'm really looking forward to learning something from you. So I really want to find some time with you. And here are the things that I'm really struggling with." And it's not necessarily that they give me a solve to it, but it's about how I can kind of navigate some of those things. So, and I think failures again have always been a good mentor for me and a teacher for me as well. So that's something that I've really learned through as well. For somebody who really wants to find a mentor, it's a vast and wide universe, right? It's about who do you really find as very symbiotic to what you're doing? Who are you comfortable with that you can share the problem and then you feel that somebody can really unblock you, right? And I think it's about finding that right balance of being able to navigate the discussion and finding the right value with somebody. And in my experience, nobody's come forward and saying, I'm going to mentor you, right? It's about me going to somebody and saying, hey, I'm looking forward to working with you. And from my side, I've always kind of found joy in sharing my experience and learnings and failures. And that's kind of where I think it'll be good for both sides. That one to be mentored and as a mentee and as a mentor, I'm finding value in learning something new as well, right? In kind of finding newer challenges that somebody is facing and how can I kind of find a way to help them.
I think what one thing you rightfully said is when you're looking for a mentor, it's to be very mindful to know that a mentor is only going to show you the paths. They're not going to walk the path
Yeah.
with you. So that's great. And coming, circling back to failures, does failure scare you now too? Considering that you may have had multiple failures, like you spoke before with your deployment decisions, anything. So, does it ever stop? I mean, do you feel comfortable, with failures, and how do you deal with it now?
It used to be earlier when probably I was younger and you used to see failures as setbacks. But I think over a period of time, you probably realize that failures are probably teaching you what not to do,
Yeah.
right? And how do you approach something better. It also is very contingent upon how is the environment for that particular team member or for the team, right? Is failure acceptable? And that's something that we are really passionate about here, that failure is going to be really critical for us to know and to learn as a group, right? That leadership mentality is critical because you want the team to fail on their own and then learn on their own, right? You should establish some guardrails for it and for yourself as well, right? What's the tipping point? Where does the risk really kind of start stretching the boundaries? Till then, the teams really should be allowed to kind of work on their own, right? And again, in terms of like finding that mentor or finding the space to be able to experiment is really critical for the teams. Like I said, I think failures and those schools probably have the best ways to kind of navigate in terms of how do we really grow. There's a famous saying that I'm really that's stuck with me and it's never gone away in my head. It keeps ringing for me, right? Like, if it's too comfortable, it's not going to be challenging, right?
Yeah.
And if it's going to be really challenging, it's not going to be easy and not going to be comfortable. So it's good to be uncomfortable, and that's where you'll start seeing failures or learnings. it's kind of what's been driving me through my career, right? And you said 20 plus years and it's gone by in a whiz, right? But that's been the joy, right? To kind of work in engineering, find ways to do new things, pick up latest tech and find something that's really you're passionate about, something that you can drive value for. It's been the journey that I've had.
Great. I think with everything that we've spoken today, Sunil, I don't think this was something which was, relevant only to the tech world. I mean, I there was so much that I could relate to. You know, everything that you emphasized on being empathetic with your customers or staying curious, failures. That still scares, no matter how much we kind of talk about it. It is still a very scary aspect uh, of our careers. So thank you for all the words of wisdom that you've shared today. And trust me, like I promised them before, this was a tech masterclass and a career therapy. Then thank you again for joining us today and sharing all your experiences. Um, they were gems. That there's a lot of takeaway for each one of us. And thank you.
Thank you, Deepthi, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my journey. And of course, I've shared what I've learned and what I've failed through and learned through. And I'm hoping it's probably useful and valuable to somebody who's listening to this.
Absolutely.
So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. For those of you watching our podcast today, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you until next time. Goodbye.